Okay, there we go. Welcome. So cooking up this session, I actually, I've harped on about to everyone that I was very ill during August and first part of September. I was a little bit delirious. Candy's got the worst of that through the messaging. But it was, I started thinking about doing this myth busting session. And the reason I didn't really act on it at the time is because I was quite delirious. And I thought, I kept seeing this stuff and the myths and misconceptions and misnomers, they are mostly coming from social media. I think we would all agree. And so I decided, right, let's wait until I'm a bit better and then I can actually do this properly. And then let's get a team together to really discuss this so that I'm not just an echo chamber as well. So I just want to thank you all for being on the panel today. This is totally for those who haven't been on our firesides before. It's a bit anything goes, as you probably realised already. It's to have upfront, honest conversations. I think I can't speak for the rest of the world, but for what's happened in the UK this year, I think these conversations are well overdue now, and I don't think we can afford to mess around anymore. Listen, I'm all for a bit of hearts and flowers, candy floss, but given that it's so many people struggle to get work this year, and we've been through some really frightening times, I think actually what I really want to do is just really genuinely help people now going forward and just sort through some of the slush. Is that a nice, polite British way to call it?
Yeah.
That works.
And so we'd invite any if there's something that you might be concerned that's a myth to you, please pop it in the chat and we will cover it. It's highly likely that what's on our minds will end up covering what's on your minds as well. But if we do miss something, honestly, we'll pick it up from the chat for you. So I'm going to start off with one that we started talking to you about, Alicia, last week in the fireside, but I just want to get it a bit more in depth, is the notion of the strategic EA.
Yeah.
And Sharon, you gave some great feedback, but not everyone who is on today was on last week's session, even though it's on YouTube. But I actually did some more digging on this, and I was a little bit shocked, and I shouldn't be. Nothing should shock me. So we've had this, I'll give you the quick cliff notes from the UK. The first time the strategic assistant, or business assistant as it was called, was actually a course that was set up by Susie Brown Stubley. And that was part of her suite of training in Castalia coaching and training. We'd never had anything like that before. It was all core secretarial diplomas, certificates. And the course was really, really good. But what's now meant by the strategic EA is not what she meant at the time. She was talking about, she was worried about the future of the profession, and she wanted to help EAs better articulate the ROI back to bosses and HR departments. And it was about how can you try to underpin some of your execs' strategic priorities, what could you realistically do, and how, and then looking further at it from the sort of value add. It's then since gone off in a bit of a tangent. We went through a major, I think it's fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, it became a feeding frenzy, as I've been calling it, and it's gone on for years, and we've almost got to the point we're doing it so much that we've not covering other stuff. And then in 2018 I did the time to train survey under EPAA, and we went directly to employers as well, and they said, well, this is all great, but now the profession is failing at some of the basics. And so we put our Back to Basics conference on twice to make sure that we were never forgetting what we call the bread and butter of the role. And then it's kind of taken off another tangent. Just to give you some shock factor, and we will come to the chat, I just want to come to the panel in a sec. So when I started having a squirrel about, I found a mesh of training companies, some who are in the EA world, some who aren't, with a complete random pricing, including a 5-day course run by a London firm that was charging £3,735 plus VAT for a 5-day course on how to be a strategic EA. There was no mention of the tutor, no mention of the expertise that to be able to teach any of us to do that.
That's mine. Sorry.
That's why you're going on a luxury cruise, not. But it was a real it's a real mess. Like what you'll learn as a strategic EA at one provider is completely different to another, and then you've got the people that are outside our industry trying to cash in. So I want to sort of throw this out to the panel. What are we thinking around this strategic EA?
Before we jump into doing that, can we just acknowledge that the world has now found the EA profession, and they're like, this is a cash cow. So it doesn't matter if it's strategic PA, it doesn't matter if it's chief of staff, it doesn't matter if you can give it all sorts of titles, but for some reason in 2024, possibly 2023 as well, they have gone, hey, this industry's got some serious coin, well, it used to. We're going to all tap into it. So let's start with the strategy side of it, but there is plenty that are looking at our profession going cha-ching.
Yeah. And not with good intentions, cha-ching. That's the main call here. I think, Vic, just to tie on to what you were saying and kind of set the scene, you know, I've always had a problem with, we talk about strategy, but that's not the whole picture. I agree. We need to have a strategic vision. We need to have our operational stuff at 100%. And in that in-between section, we need to merge those two ideas and take constructive action, effective action. So I talk about the tactical assistant, and I can't wait to see somebody else using that shortly. But, you know, just having a bit more of a holistic view, because you can't do this without your operational aspects. So for me, I always felt there was something missing, and that was just personally for me. So I think, yes, there's been a lot of almost artificial focus there, and there's many other things, but this one is the oldest. Sherwin, you'll know, every second program in South Africa will have the strategic assistant somewhere. Either as a session or as a title. And I can't anymore, because I don't think it's doing us any justice, and it's not really giving us anything to work with.
I agree. I think, sorry, Sherwin, go ahead.
No, you go.
I think the concept of the strategic EA for me started from a good place. It started from a well-meaning place. And to me, it was, if you don't understand the strategy behind the business that you're working in, you're going to find it hard to prioritize and understand how to contribute to the goals of the company overall. What it turned into, it seems to me, is that there are people trying to advocate for EAs being almost an equal strategic partner in the direction of the business. And I just don't think that's accurate. I think we assist the leadership team and the CEO in making those decisions, but they're not our decisions to make. We just need to understand where they're coming from. I held a webinar about 2 years ago, and it was with execs from Lenovo talking, and it was called the Strategic Assistant. And it was the only one I held in that regard, because the word strategy was being thrown out everywhere, and I was getting emails, Alicia, of all the webinars, like, how do I become, everyone was freaking out, how do I become a strategic assistant? I don't know what it means to be strategic. To me, it just means you need to understand the direction of the business, why the decisions are being made. You need to understand how the business makes money, and that helps you understand how to prioritize. So when you're in your exec's inbox and you're prioritizing meetings, you know what to do without asking them, because you know what the priorities are.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's that notion, and I think what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years is people have, like you say, Alicia, people have started promoting this EA making decisions. Like, you want to make a decision for a business, you need to ask yourself, would you go to jail for that business? Because that's how people are starting to tie these things together. They're trying to go, as an EA, yes, you have influence. Yes, you can steer direction. But actually, at the end of the day, you're not responsible for that business. You're merely a conduit for that business to be a success. And this is what I can say to EAs, is like, your role is to be a conduit to success, right? You've got to, you are the voice of reason when someone's unreasonable within the business. You are the ears on the ground when someone needs gossip. You are information about what's going on. You have to, and you said this, Vic, you have to get the basics right in order to do the job, and that's fine. And we focus on basics, but as a strategic, there was business partner, there was EA, there was strategic chief of staff. There was all these titles floating about, right? At the end of the day, your input is limited in its voice within the business. Yes, it's heard, but it's limited in terms of rollout. And this is what we need to start understanding as EAs. You need to get the basics right. Yes, you can influence the conversation, but like there's a whole, you do not define the strategy of the business. That's why they're founders, that's why they're co-founders, that's why there's the leadership team. So yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous that people are charging. I saw something online yesterday and it was AI. We were talking about AI before. This was AI for executive assistants, and I went, that sounds good. Let me go have a look at what the prospectus was. And it's exactly as a strategic assistant. It's like, it's high level rubbish. I call it rubbish because none of the speakers there understand the industry, right? So you don't understand the profession or the industry. Why are you trying to teach someone about a specific topic? I mean, this was like Copilot and ChatGPT and all of these other things. And I went, £1,400 for 2 days for me to do, for me to go and listen to someone talk about ChatGPT that I've been using for the last 4 years, even if it's infancy stage, that I've been using Copilot since it just blows my mind how people just take these topics and just like, okay, and like you said, Candice, there's loads of money in this industry. So what do? We target those businesses and we target the industry so we can make money.
And EAs are eager to learn. They're a group of people who are always keen to better themselves, pursue more, learn more, and so they will sign up. And I think what Candice was saying earlier, companies have cottoned on to this.
And there's also a fear campaign going around that you're going to be left behind, your job is going to be out, you are no longer going to be relevant. And so these AI particular ones that are quite at the price point, it's just like, oh God, I want to expose them.
I think part of the thing, one thing that has always shocked me, and I'm not a global influencer. I've been very clear, my market is the UK, and I love the UK assistants dearly, but one of the things that's always shocked me about my own peer group here is the lack of due diligence they do when they're researching into what training they might want to do going forward. And because obviously it's very hard to out people and some of the crooks that I might call them, you know, because we could get sued, but it's all there if you just look for yourself. Another point I will make, I know this isn't only going on in our industry, but I'm a big person in I've done a lot of work in the EDI world over the years, and the wheels are coming off in EDI at the moment. Equity, diversity and inclusion. And one of the things, so this report came out last week by one of the original co-founders of Stonewall. And it's just to give you an example, because I think there is a slight crossover. So the report was called Flying the Flags and Ticking the Boxes, Why Has EDI Gone So Wrong? And there's a lot of tribunal cases going through the UK at the moment where people have been sacked for various things that they probably shouldn't have been. But one of the things they identified in the EDI world, that when the George Floyd incident happened, there was a massive trainers who weren't EDI experts that suddenly swept in and were pitching to big corporates and public sector organisations that they had all these programs, and they were going in, they weren't vetted by British companies. And actually, one EDI training firm has ended up costing one of our banks £1 million at tribunal for a chap who won his tribunal last year. Because they looked at the background of this person afterwards, and this person should never have been training in EDI. So that's part of the problem as to why it's been going a little bit wrong, because the original experts and people you would expect to be teaching subjects like this to really drive change just got pushed out the way.
But I would push that onus. I would push that onus on the people who hired them. That's on them.
Quite. I mean, there's a question for HR.
The EAs that are pitching to get funding to go to conferences or get coaches or do events or join communities or all these things, you have to do your due diligence to see which ones are worth joining, which ones are like, I see ones that are like, oh, you get CDB points. What the? Sorry, there's my potty mouth again. But what the F is a CDP point of use to me and my company? My company doesn't care about these points. Like, if it's on my resume, nobody cares about these points. If I moved country, does that account in the UK to the US. Like, you've got to see what is it that what is it actually going to achieve? What is the certification that you get out of it? What, like, for instance, there's a particular, very, 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 very popular one at the moment that is touting that you can do a Chief of Staff course in 3 days, and then you would get your little certification saying that you're now able to be a Chief of Staff. No, you're not. You're not able to be a Chief of Staff after 3 days. And what is the certification? That company? They certify
there's no
okay,
official.
I'll certify it too. Give me $2,000. I'll certify it for you. Like,
it's interesting though, because I get asked. I was asked recently in the EA How To Facebook group. Somebody said, you know, what's the best EA certification? I said there isn't an EA certification. Like, there are EA courses you can do. But I'm a big believer in, apart from the fact that on-the-job learning has proven in the salary reports we've done for the US, UK, and Australia, that on-the-job learning seems to matter more than anything else, especially in the UK. But micro-learning, go and find the gaps in your knowledge and fill them. So if you don't know, if you're switching from Google, being a Google user, to Microsoft, and you don't know anything about using the entire Microsoft suite, then maybe go and do some Microsoft courses to get up to speed. If you know that your job requires advanced Excel and you're not there, then go and do an advanced Excel course. If your issue is time management and productivity and you're using Asana or Trello or something, then do an Asana or a Trello course to get up to speed. But this idea of
I would also advise you to do it from someone like, say, you at EA How To, where there's an admin that's going to show you how it's beneficial to you in your job, not just on Udemy, where you pay 20 quid and you get an example of how you use it in finance. It's like, well, that doesn't help me in my admin job. That doesn't help me as an executive assistant. Because you have to see who's training, whether you resonate with them as well, because you may find them patronizing. Like, if I find a trainer patronizing, you've lost me. Like, but if I find a trainer that I'm just sitting there, like Rachel Bonetti, whenever she trains, I'm like, and I'm 100 years old. I've done this job forever, and I still look at her training and listen to the way that she speaks, and I'm like, you just get it. You just get it. So find those people, find those communities, find those trainers, and it doesn't always have to cost. Go to the EA How To YouTube page. Jesus, there's that many tutorials.
Yeah. But Candice, I think you make such an important point about the context. Yes, if it's a specialist area that isn't, you know, you sort of have an interest, like Vic was saying about the technology summit, where you give an overview. But when it comes to, you know, I was in a session once with an HR person presenting, who was saying, in a conflict situation with your leadership, this is how you handle it. And I could see the speech bubble over my own head saying, you have no idea how this works. So I do think context matters. And having been at the coalface and done it yourself informs how you get that information across and what the application is within that person's role. So I just wanted to say, yes, I agree, 100%.
And that, Sharon, I think we opened to the PA show, and I know Sherwin was there. I got to meet you briefly there for 5 seconds. I wish we got to chat more, but it just means I have to come back to London so we can have a proper catch up. But I found at the PA show that the one and only one I went to is I went to some of the sessions, and I was like, none of this is relevant to admin. Like, one of them was about feng shui. I'm like, did you see any of
what happens when the schedule needs to be filled, when somebody notices a gap in the time?
I was like, how did you get in here?
It's all about free speakers. You know, when the free tap is turned off,
as we say.
Yeah, I think very quickly, it was becoming prevalent to me in 2019. We did 2 conferences, like in the couple of months just before COVID. And I remember a PA putting up her hand in the Q&A saying, Vic, it's all farewell, you know, you people in the industry telling us to do this, but our bosses don't want us to work more strategically. And it's not like I hadn't ever been aware of that. When I used to present about my career, yeah, I did work strategically, but I had to work ferociously hard to get the bosses to buy into that. Once they did, it was plain sailing after that. But I did recognize that this is still like a lot of British bosses and companies don't see the role in this. I feel that we've gone up here and the bosses are down here and we've just not connected the dots or the conversation with them. Sharon, you've been working in the UK for a bit now. What's your thinking?
I mean, again, it's a personal thing. So, I mean, I came from a really, I'm going to use the word strategic, but I came from a really strategic position before I moved from Cape Town. I mean, it's like you were saying, you had the era people, they understood it, they knew the business, they knew which way to go, they trusted you to do things. I walked into the UK and I went, what the is going on here? Because I walked in and I went, you might as well just create a typist pool, and put all these EAs in a box and say, you will get a memo through the door, and that's what you need to do. Because so maybe it was the industry that I was working in, maybe it was just the companies that I was working for, but it became a very, it looked to me like the UK was very reactive in terms of what the EAs did, right? So that was the first learning curve. And I being South African and being loudmouth and being an extrovert, I had to tone myself down because people just didn't like that. So that was the one thing. The second thing I saw was that, okay, it's all over the world, but obviously it was very female orientated. It was very submissive in nature, which don't ask me to be submissive because you'll get the wrong side of me. And it was very like, it was far removed from the business. So they had an EA, they had an administrative function within the business, but it didn't sit within the business. It sat outside of the business. And whatever was fed to them was like, can you do that? It was very, I mean, I remember the first, after the first 3 months, I was like, if I put another diary entry in, I swear to God, I'm going to walk out there, I'm going to throw my computer against the floor, and I'm going to say cheers. It was very old school EA. And now, having said that, we have moved away from an old school EA role. I mean, the professions moved forward. There are EAs being, I'm going to say it again, strategic in nature.
It's not a dirty word. It's not a dirty word.
But it's the context of it. So like you being strategic and you've got an intention to be strategic. You want to go out and you want to influence situations or have some sort of influence. But that's not happening in the UK. I've met tons of EAs at the PA show and all of those things and say, well, how did you get to where you were? And I go, by learning from others and not going to, I mean, I've been to tons of courses and conferences and all those things. But like you say, it was taking from those leaders the things that you want to instill in yourself.
Makes sense.
And then, I mean, and then moving that forward. You look in South Africa, it's probably the same type of environment from a submissive, waiting, very reactive nature. You have got EAs that are very proactive, and they've got the influence and they've got their bosses here and the business's well-being. But we need to move away from this submissive nature. London is very, Cape Town, I thought, was laid back. In London, it's like everyone's dormant. Like it's like it's winter all the time. Yes, it does rain a lot, but like EAs need to get out and be heard, and they don't. Besides the 1 or 2 or 10 that you know of, you ladies included in the panel and some of the ladies on the conversation, there are people who are advocating, but too many of them just sit back and take a salary. I'm not in this role to take a salary. Yes, I'd like the salary, but like it comes second nature to what I do. And it's just that, and then following on from that, I look at, and we spoke about this last week. So obviously they've done great work with the job skills matrix, the global skills matrix for EAs. Great work. But there's that disconnect between business and that document.
Okay, Sherwin.
I mean, the document is a guide.
No, for sure. It's a guide. But
I also think
it hasn't. That people keep banging on about, oh, that document's been read and understood by our HR department. It
hasn't. It's only been read by admins.
They've got no clue as to what a level 5, I'm not even going into the levels because I still think you cannot clearly define a level in this business.
Yeah, it's a guide, but if we're going to jump onto it, because we are in the myth busting, I think that made a mistake by adding in that the next stage is chief of staff.
Yeah.
Can I even be more controversial?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going
Please.
to make a prediction. I'm going to make a prediction, and you're all going to buy me a round of drinks if this prediction pans out, because I firmly believe this. I believe we are moving into a completely new era of individualization of roles, where you will create your new job. There is no person on the planet who can tell you what the next 5 years is going to look like for you. You need to go and engineer it yourself. So I applaud the fact that they've done that homework and they've put that on paper. But anyone who's ever tried to align, even in companies, even across teams, to get that alignment or change something just in one business, in one team, knows that trying to roll something out globally, I just feel is that where our focus should be. Because I firmly, firmly believe, and you can quote me on this in 5 years' time or 3 years' time, you will have to go and build it. Nobody has a recipe for you. If they can give you the recipe, they can find somebody cheaper to do it, or they can get AI to replace you. It's about finding that individual value and creating the role from scratch for yourself.
Well, and
that's firmly what I believe.
That there are so many, there are EAs and EAs, and they all do very different things. And an EA in a small business is different to an EA in a startup, is different to an EA that's managing a team of 16 EAs at KPMG. And, there is different to an ultra high net worth individual EA. There are so many different types of jobs, and every role that I've been in has been really, really different and has required very different things from me. Some more strategic, some more tactical and reactive. So it's very hard to define. And you're talking about
but it's also because
where, you've got EAs who are making £24,000 and are almost sort of front house reception / junior admin type thing. And then you've got someone who has the same title, executive assistant, who's making £90,000. They're doing very different jobs, but they have the same title.
But it's also this whole notion of being able to try and box it.
Yeah.
Like you said, an EA is an EA is an EA. 3 different roles, 3 different salaries, 3 different benchmarks, 3 different KPIs or sets of KPIs. It's us trying to pigeonhole this career into saying you either have to be A, B, C, D, or E, and that's not working, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same across a lot of other industries. I mean, one accountant's not the same from another one, Yes, they work on the same type of thing. They work in finance and they do numbers, but it's not the same thing. Us rolling out these levels, yes, I understand why we did it. And I, like Anil said, I am really grateful it's been done because someone took the time to try and understand the industry. But what you've now done is you've now forced people into this funnel of trying to get themselves to a level. Oh, I want to be a level 3. Oh, I want to be a level 4. Actually, my love, you're already a level 4, even though you've only had 3 years experience, because you work with a founder from startup all the way to first round serious funding. You've gone through IPO in 3 years. So yes, you are level 4, but you've only had 3 years. I think it's us actually just going out there and going, you know what? This is me. My name is Sharon. I've been an EA for X amount of years. This is what I've done. I've worked in X, Y, and Z. And I know my worth, and it's X. It's that. That is the crux of the matter. People do not, in this industry, do not know their worth. And Candice, you had this when you moved to the UK. You knew what your worth was. But the moment you put it out there, the moment you verbalize it, people go, oh no, can't have her around because like she's going, I had it when I moved, can't have him around because he's going to cause trouble. He puts himself at X amount. Yes, I do, because I know what I've done. He is too afraid to speak out at the fear of being either sold out of the position or being told, sorry, you're too senior. Candice, what you had all of these reasons, right? You're too senior.
You're overqualified. You're this, you're that. But I was even chatting with Alicia yesterday because we were talking about the Australian results that have been released today. So if we have any Australians watching or watching the feedback, the watch back, check out the EA How To Salary Guide. I was really shocked with it, and I kept saying, I earned that salary when I was this, and I, turned down this salary because it was only this. And Alicia was like, do you kind of realize that you're in the top 1% there with the salaries? And I'm like, but I shouldn't be. Like in my head, that's what someone of my level should be worth. This is the value that I bring, and you're earning 50 times more than me. But I'm doing all, for example, I'll give you an example. When I worked for Kelly Hoppen, and she's a famous interior designer over here for anyone that doesn't know, when COVID happened, she basically said to me, I have to be the creative and get the work done so that we have business coming in the door, but you have to do the business. And I was like, yeah, got it. And then I just had to pick up and then just take on the business. And that is what gave me the ability to be able to start my own businesses, because someone believed in me and let me trial it, and I was able to do it. But then when I looked at that and I was like, okay, so I want this amount of money to go with it in the next role. Not Kelly. Kelly was very good with money, but they were like, oh no, like you were an EA. And it's like, yes, but I did this and I did this and I did this. And they're like, doesn't matter, you're an EA. And that's the thing.
There's what you're worth, and there's what you want, and there's what the market's willing to pay you, which really determines what you're worth. And they can be different things. And especially at the moment, the market is, one of the worst we've seen in a long time.
But it's also
just to come back to that, I think it's so important when we're talking about the EA role proper, that we should all be looking at a specialization. We should all have something that we do. I love when Alicia said, do micro learning, but don't forget to also train for your strengths. The stuff that you're really exceptional at, get that to the next level, So train for, yes, the gap, but also the potential, and then have a serious specialization, because that will also influence what the future is going to look like. And if you have that specialization, I can then go negotiate and say, yes, I'm an experienced EA, but I also bring XYZ skill to the table, and I have experience, having worked with that. So I think that also helps when you can get to the table. And obviously, I mean, it's something that I'm quite passionate about, is if you have a strong brand. I don't care what they call me. Guys, I care what gets paid into my salary, into my bank account at the end of the month. They can call me chief cook and bottle washer. I don't care.
Yeah, and I completely agree with having a niche. I think having a niche is really valuable.
When I first started saying that to British PAs over 10 years ago, because I'd already done it, and that's how I saved my own career during the recession, whilst these literally in the UK hundreds of thousands of I wasn't anything special compared to them, but I cottoned on to, I've got a mortgage to pay and I can't afford to lose my job.
It's also the only profession that I left for 3 years. I left after the pandemic, and then I came back last year, God, I don't know what year are we in. And it's the only profession that I have seen go backwards. So I came back 3 years later, and my salary that they wanted me to take was so much less. And I was like, but the job is so much more, and what you're wanting, and they're like, doesn't matter, this is what the salary rate is. And I'm like, no other profession that I have been dealing with has to deal with this right now. But I don't know if it's because we're in a recession, or we were coming out of a recession. There are plenty of reasons for it, but I've always been an advocate that being an EA could be a career for life, and now I don't believe in that. Now I believe that you can have a great EA career, but it's not going to be for life, and that you need other skills. And like Jessica McBride, for instance, her prediction is that we're going to be consultants. We're going to be EA consultants that come in with, this is the skill set, this is what I do, this is, this is how I can help you in my EA capacity, but this is my kind of my trick book.
I think that could be true for some industries, but I still see a very important place for EAs in most businesses these days, and doing the basics, because I know we were talking about the basics earlier. And one of the things that really started to shift my perception, and why I stopped creating, trying to do webinars on the strategic EA, was because I started doing more and more one-on-ones with really experienced assistants, and getting feedback from both them and their exec. And the exec feedback kept coming back to me saying, I know this person X can do more. I think they're amazing. I really value what they do. I know that they could do more, but I don't need them to do more. I need them to keep managing the diary and keep on top of the inbox and keep doing the appointments, because that's actually what I need day to day. And if they don't think that that's enough for them to fulfill them, then they're probably going to have to move on, because as much as I know that they're capable of, it's not actually what I need. I think, what EAs do is we save time, And it's great if you can go into a business where they do want you to do more and they want you to be more strategic and you really feel like you're part of the leadership team and that kind of thing. But I'm hearing increasingly from execs and from EAs who really want us to go back to basics and to just do them really well. They just don't stuff up the calendar, don't stuff up the inbox, you know, do all of the basic things really, really well and save me time. And the execs even said, this doesn't preclude you from any future salary increases. I know what you're worth and I'm happy to pay. And I'm talking about, you know, the first time this conversation came up was with an EA in the States who makes $160,000 a year. And she said, I just feel like I could do more. And he said, you could, but I don't need you to.
Yep.
And he said, and you know, that's he's paying $160,000 a year. He is not silly. He knows what she's worth. And he said, it doesn't preclude you increases and bonuses.
That's where I think this problem is that we have here is that the people then think, then now I need to be a chief of staff. And it's like, no,
I don't need one.
Exactly. But what I need is you to be this amazing EA. But they're like, oh no, I've been told and marketed to that I should be a chief of staff, and then people are going to think I'm amazing. I can put on my LinkedIn and I can have a piece of paper that says I'm a chief of staff. Like,
but it's just another flavor of the month. It's the flavor of the month. It's a sales gimmick.
Yeah.
I honestly think if you are a top level, I mean, immediately I think of somebody like our CEO at Telkom's EA. I mean, she was paid better than the group executives. She had better parking than them. She was involved in everything. I mean, every 18 months, there's a new CEO. She's the only consistent part. So if that's not a chief of staff, then I don't know what a chief of staff is. Does it matter what they call you? But some of us just want to change our LinkedIn titles. We just want a business card that says chief of staff. Now, if the motivation is ego, I think a lot of this taglining of chief of staff is ego-based for me. Gotcha. You know, I don't know. There are genuine chief of staff out there. But honestly, it comes back to, and I firmly believe it, please don't throw stones at me. I don't care what it's called. Are you adding value? You know, if you have that specialization, you creating your own role expansion. So yes, just doing the basics beautifully. If you've got a specialization, you've got something to keep you interested and occupied. It's the best of both worlds, you know. And to Alicia's point, you know, I had one of the execs, I also worked with a coaching couple where I was talking to the boss and the PA, and I was actually told, unless this EA is doing the basics at 300%, I cannot trust them to do anything more interesting. So people are like, this is just operational stuff. You know, I'm really focused here. But if you take your eye off the ball on the basics, nobody's going to trust you. It's about credibility and relationships. You also don't just parachute into an organization and suddenly you're a strategic partner. You build that over time. You know, you build that with credibility and reputation. So nobody can hand you a piece of paper and say, there you go. You're awesome now. Here you go with your piece of paper. And I think because stuff like this is being sold, now you're a genuine chief of staff, but somebody walks in with their 3-day piece of paper, you know,
well,
you are watering down a lot of things.
That you can be a career executive assistant. There's nothing wrong with being a career executive assistant. I was a career executive assistant. Best career of my life. Still proud of it. Still talk about it. Have made 2 businesses around it. I'm an admin advocate for it.
I think it's really sad. Well, Alicia mentioned last week, and I hope you don't mind me quoting you here, but you said exactly what was on my mind. We were targeted as an industry, and obviously a few of you brought it up at the beginning. It was actually more about money. But this is the sad thing. I understand where we've got this frenzy about the chief of staff. I totally understand where it's come from. It's gone on longer than I would have liked, and I've said my bit countless times in public about it, but I do think it's really sad because what's happened is it's made the EA role come across as some sort of rubbish role, and that's where I'm quite cross actually because it's not.
I agree. And always advocate for career EAs. I think you can have a great, fulfilling, lucrative career as an executive assistant.
Yeah, and obviously Sharon, a big fan of the skills matrix, but I'm not sure how it'll fit going forward for the UK because I think the level thing, as you mentioned earlier, it's just not going to work here. But the chief of staff trend, it's in that skills matrix, and that's where some of the people I've been coaching were quoting it, saying to me, but it says on the skills matrix I can be you know, a chief of staff. And I know it's only a guide, but when you've got an industry that's desperately trying to, you know, get a better salary, better career, they've held on to that really, really tightly. So I hope that the excellent team behind the matrix might look at a possible revision of that, because I'm not sure that it should be in there.
I mean,
Sorry.
I
we
agree.
still go back, I'm going back a bit, but we still go back to this whole thing of negotiation, right? I am an avid believer in you need to negotiate in order to get what you want. No one's going to hand it to you. You're not going to walk into a business and they're going to say, oh, yeah, we'll pay you double what you were earning. It's all about negotiation. But it comes back down to that whole specialization of what you do, filling the gaps you can't do, doing the basics really well. But like EAs don't negotiate. Let's just be honest now, right?
Yeah.
Majority of the EAs you talk to and they go, oh, I didn't really do well at the interview. And you go, well, what were they going to pay you? Well, they're going to pay me X. And you go, well, why were you wanting to get the job when you're so much more than that? And she's like, well, at least I get a job, right? We're in a market, the job market is so scarce at the moment. And it's not scarce, actually, right? It's just, it's because people have muddled the waters with this EA, trying to define the EA, and they muddled the waters. People are looking for the wrong skills for the wrong roles. So I've seen someone wanting to pay £26,000 for someone who's got like 10 years experience, like worked with board of directors, and then you go like, are you
really?
Have you really thought about this? But it's because the role's been muddied because of EAs and EAs and EA, right? But EAs go into that role knowing full well what the salary is, and they'll accept the salary, and 6 months later they go, well, they're paying me too little for the role that I'm doing. But did you negotiate it at the beginning the same way negotiating with yourself what you value yourself at and what you need to do? I speak to a few EAs on a like coaching type level, and I keep saying to them, like, you can't just walk around with the blindfold on and expect things to happen, right? And they go, no, but I've done this, and I've done, and I go, yes, but have you shown your ability? And now you were talking about the 300% of basics. Have you shown your ability? Have you actually gone out there and had the conversation with the right people? Okay? Yeah. There you go. You're not having the conversation with EAs. Everybody shies away from causing mayhem.
A lot of EAs, though, do not have the confidence to negotiate, though. And this is something, it's a women's problem. Women often will not even apply for a job because they're like, oh, I only have 6 of the 10 qualifications. But then they don't negotiate. They don't have that confidence. And maybe this is something you need to be doing with EPAA going forward, Vic, is getting some more, maybe Sherwin can do some more coaching sessions on confidence and about tools and templates and things like this, because it's a real issue with women that they don't ask. And in my quote in life is don't ask, don't get in everything. Everything.
So
but it is a women issue.
It's funny you talk about women not wanting to do those things. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and someone said men use their network to get things done, right? So they use networking as a tool to get things done, where women use networking for kinship, for
I think we probably attended the same event, Sherwin.
You know what I mean? And it's until you find that your network actually needs to help you get things done that things will start turning around. And I think as EAs, we probably have the best connections of any industry in the world. But if you're not using that correctly, it's not going to do anything for you. And I know you were talking about brand and all of those other things. Like, you don't have the right brand, people aren't going to buy into you. They're going to look at you and they're going to go, no, actually not. But then we go back to brand and we talk about authenticity. Are you portraying a brand and not being authentic about it?
Yeah.
Like, you know who I am and you'll get me all the time, right? I'm not going to be someone different for different people. I'm always the same person.
Correct.
You need to just use what you've got in your toolbox and just make it happen.
And, you know, Sherwin, just to tie into that, Candice made a very good point. And I've always said, if I could fix one thing for the profession, if I could be queen for the day and sprinkle fairy dust, I would give everyone 10% more confidence and all the other problems would fix themselves. So I firmly, firmly agree with that. And just coming back to what Sherwin was saying, when you look at how we've branded ourselves as a profession, you might have an incredible professional brand, but your next door neighbor, they don't say, Sherwin behaved himself badly. They say the EAs are acting up, or the EAs, we have a bit of a group think where people are now lumped together, which is hurting your earning potential. Brand is not a nice to have. It literally defines your earning potential. So I think we all need to just focus inward. I can only work on me. Worrying about global, and again, whenever we're talking about something that's happening outside of me, I'm not here for that. We can only focus internally and how we're going to map the future individually. So if you focus on my skills, the value I can bring, I think everyone's in a better place.
Yeah, so it's becoming a little bit of a misnomer. It's not fully there yet because, frankly, we've got to unpick a few mindsets. It's this obsession here, and this is not a global thing, I don't think. It is in the UK because of how we've mostly operated over the decades. But it's this whole notion of a professional pathway map. And when we did the Evolution versus Revolution event a couple of weeks ago, I talked about what some of the well-known institutes are doing here, like the CIPD for HR, the British Facilities Management Institute, the CIPR. A lot of them have got rid of their career pathways. And the reason is because they noticed that people weren't staying in those roles for 40 years, that they were coming in from all different directions, and that telling somebody you've got to be this level, do this to get this is not working. And so what they've now created, and they've all sort of followed suit, and so we're following after them as well, because I think it's really, really good. They've created what's called a set of standards and values, so that if you come into this profession, there's some competencies that you'll absolutely have to have at a basic level to succeed. But here are the values that you need to be able to operate in this profession. And it was quite radical of the CIPD to do that. I never thought they'd do something like that. But the marketplace is changing, and I've, it's not the first time I've said, look, we've got people in our membership that have, they haven't worked from a junior secretary up to a PA to an EA to the C-suite. I've got an ex-Metropolitan Police officer who had enough of her role, and I mentioned this in the Fireside last week, and she's gone straight into EA to a CEO of a tech firm in London. And what he did is, they said, well, okay, she didn't have X, X, and X, but she said, well, I'm willing to learn. You have to when you're a copper all the time. She did have some hostage negotiation skills, which he was quite interested in. Could be good for investors and shareholders. But the point is, she had some skills that other EAs didn't. And he was like, oh, I could actually make use of that. And even when I was talking about this at the Evolution versus Revolution seminar, a PA put up her hand, bless her, and said, but we still, we've got to get a part of it. Why? Because everyone's journey is very different. I've come up the traditional route, but a lot of my peer group that I talk to, my best friends in London, that we all have this mad city career, they came in from all different directions. If I look back at the Hayes Times PA of the Year Award, which was one of the most prestigious awards we've ever had in this industry, I'm doing a panel with the ex-winners and what happened next. So I'm just putting it out there, but most of them weren't from PA backgrounds. One of the most successful PAs in that award structure came from a marketing background. She got fed up with marketing and went straight into EA of a CEO of a not-for-profit. So it's just not linear, and we need to get out of this obsession. Yeah. And I keep seeing it on the echo chambers, and it's like, well, if you're going to be an EA to the CEO, you've got to do this, you have to do that. And no, and that's why we're changing things at EPAA, because I want to make this profession more attractive. I don't think it is if we keep telling outsiders, you've got to do this, got to do that, and your skill set as a copper doesn't matter, it's not relevant. That's where the dial has to change, I think.
And Vic, just to come back to that, if there is no map for the future, if COVID taught us anything, if the rise of AI is teaching us anything, every single industry has been disrupted. Who are we to think we will get out unscathed and we can just carry on business as usual? If they can map it out, that means a machine can take it over, folks. So do you really want a recipe? Because then they will find somebody cheaper or they'll replace you. It's that soft skill. It's that the soft skills will become the hard skills. I mean, if we look at the World Economic Forum's 2020 top skills list, assistants tick 8 out of 10 without getting up in the morning and doing anything special. I mean, we literally have that skill set, but I don't see one LinkedIn profile where those keywords are mentioned. Remember, these are in-demand skills. Again, if you've got that skill set and they're looking for these people, they're saying this is what the ideal employee looks like. And most assistants tick 8 out of 10. That's good news for us, folks, but we're not leveraging that. We're not developing, looking at those skills more deeply and saying, how do I build this? We're not putting it onto LinkedIn profiles. We're not putting it onto CVs. So, these are buzzwords, but why can't we focus on different buzzwords? Instead of saying I'm a strategic assistant, you can say, I tick out of the top skills for 2025, I tick 8 or I tick 9 and include them as keywords. For me, it's just we need to start thinking differently.
I go back to when you were talking about CPD points and all of that things, because it just hit me. If you look at all of the trainers that offer CPD points for EA in the EA profession or administrative people, there are too many, right? There's so many people that when you look at it, it says, oh, you get 5 CPD points and a certificate, like you're saying.
I have no idea what these points do, by the
No,
way.
but so it's almost like in the HR department where you've got that you've got a system where you've got to collect a certain amount of points every year.
Yeah,
to say
so they are required for a lot of workplaces, and that's why we.
Right.
I mean, I can see that after showing.
There's so many people who offer these CPD points, but where do they go? Where are they being recorded? And then you look at it, and there's a particular training brand that I keep my eye on, because I always look at people who are over-promising and under-delivering, because to me, if someone asks me about it, I'm going to be very honest about it. And offering CPD points out to people that are not, where the CPD points aren't relevant, to me it's theft, because you're stealing money and not giving anything in return. Yes, they're going to come out your conference, they're going to feel really good about it. But reading 90 testimonials about a particular thing and then looking at the prospectus and going, how was that life-changing? What skill did you learn? Because if I look at all of the prospectus, all it is it's just like how to manage people's emotions. Like, what CPD point do you get for that? Yeah.
So the CPD thing is an interesting one.
Is it just English?
No.
No, but it is a big
CPD
thing
specifically is a big thing in the UK, but there are equivalents all over the place. But the issue with it is, so a lot of government programs require basically to get L&D to cover your training. They'll say we need to see that it gets CPD points. The idea being that for your course to be CPD certified, it has had to go through CPD. They've checked it for the content you're creating, how you're delivering it, is it accessible, is it all of these things, are you meeting a certain type of objectives? It costs quite a bit of money. So EA How To never offered CPD points for anything, and we kept getting members asking because their workplace would only pay for it if it gave them CPD points. So we thought, okay, we're always encouraging workplaces to pay. We need to start looking into this. So I've only ever done it with 2 courses. The travel booking and management for executive assistants and minute taking for executive assistants are the 2 courses that EA How To runs that are CPD certified. That means I had to pay quite a lot of money to CPD to have them look at my course and say, yes, we feel like this course and the content meets the objectives that you're setting. So it's basically a third party saying, we think this is good enough for you to put our seal on it.
There is I've got a spanner to put in the works for CPD from a HR perspective and EPAA. I've got a huge problem with the CPD standards agency here. So obviously I've been presenting in the PA world for a long time, and the former Office Show, which was the predecessor of the PA show, they got on the CPD bandwagon, and I found out that they'd put, so I'd done an hour's slot there for them, and apparently they'd awarded X amount of CPD, but my slides were never seen by the CPD agency because the officer used to say, come on the day with your memory stick. So nobody ever saw my slides other than the people that were in. Anyway, we set up EPAA, and from a HR, because I worked in HR, I knew CPD is quite important here, but the PA industry wasn't really doing it then. So going back to 2016, 17, in fact, an industry leader wrote a blog saying CPD doesn't matter for PAs. And I launched EPAA's CPD program, and we paid out this ton of money to the CPD Standards Agency. And it's a license fee.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, don't you want to see the content that you're supposed to be putting these points on? But are you actually looking through this? And I caught them out. They hadn't been. They were just awarding points to the sessions that were run by me and our trainers. And I got into a big argument with them because I just said, I find this absolutely appalling. And I said, you know what, we're just going to go ahead with our own CPD thing. I also challenged them because the historic thing with CPD here is it's done on the hours that you learn. So if you've got 60 CPD, you've done 60 hours of learning, but people have different learning rates. And especially if you've got if you're neurodivergent, your learning hours will be very different. I can read books. Well, I used to be able to pre-COVID read books quite quickly. I can't now. But they used to say that you get CPD points for reading a book, but what might take one PA an hour, it could take another PA 4 hours. And I was questioning them on this stuff and they hated it. So what we did, why I set the CPD program up with EPAA is I said to the PAs, you're all over the place with learning and development. That the whole point when an institute offers this, or an association, it's to help you get an annual record together so that at the end of the year, you've got this sort of, and if you're on the job market, you can say, this is all the learning I've done. But we changed it to something more modern, which some of the other institutes were doing, calling it credits. And so credits doesn't look at the time it takes you to be on a course or reading a book. It looks at the overall activity. So I refuse to pay out for that license now. I've spoken to many HR people. A lot of HR directors said to me it's like a legacy thing in the UK because it's just been around for like decades, since after Second World War, and they've just sort of kept it up. But I have some ethical issues with how they're doing
I have massive
this.
issues with how they're doing it. It was literally an exercise in us in trying to help EAs get their workplaces to pay for their training. And so I don't actually agree with the system at all.
No.
But I do agree with workplaces investing in learning and development for their EAs. Yeah. And if that was one of the things that was going to help them do that, then that's what I was willing to do. And
then
the
you
thing
need to do it.
The US market is because we had a meeting this morning about whether we're going to provide certificates in 2025 for webinars, because we haven't to date. And we've had a few people say that they're not purchasing membership because we don't give certificates. And the issue with that is that they have PACE and CAP certification in the US, which more and more UK EAs seem to be wanting to pursue for some reason. But in order to maintain your PACE certification, you need to show a certain amount of hours ongoing education. And so that certificate, it doesn't prove to me that you've done it. It doesn't prove to me that you're any good at it. It just shows that you attended.
You've ticked a box.
If that's what, again, gets their workplace to pay for it to maintain their PACE certification, then that's what I'm trying to get them to do.
So be it.
Yeah.
I have to go very soon. I'm really sorry, but I want to drop 3 quick smoke bombs that you guys can either pick up on after, or I just want to drop them because this is being recorded. Right. My thing is, you don't need to go to conferences. You can join groups where you can do smaller learning. And also, if you are going to a conference, make sure that the speakers are being paid. Number 2, there are too many fucking awards. You don't need an award. You don't need someone to say that you're great. You're great.
Here's a gold star.
You just, there's too many awards. And the next one is chief of staff is not an admin role. It's a completely different role. You are able to study to be it, as you are able to study to be a lawyer, but it is a completely different role. It's not an admin role. So there's my 3 Candace. Mic dropping out of this one. Please feel free to hate me for it. You can say whatever.
That's fine.
But you said Mythbusting. These are my Mythbusters.
That's fine. I know your views on all of them because we've spoken at length, so I feel confident I'll be able to share your viewpoint. But thanks.
All right, I gotta run, but please
Carry
continue,
on.
and thank you
Yeah.
everyone that joined, and talk to you all soon.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Okay, let's get on to the conferences. Now, we did briefly mention this in the Fireside last week, but we could probably go into it in a bit more detail. Obviously, I was known pre-COVID for being a conference queen. I'd set them up for a long, long time in the UK, tried to make them as cost efficient as possible, you know, getting really good content and speakers there. But the game has changed, and a couple of things, in my opinion, disagree. The concentration spans of people has changed since COVID, and that goes across all generations. To have somebody sitting in a room now, 9 to 5:30, 9 to 6, some of them go on for, and you're literally getting 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes panel, 50 minutes, quick lunch. You know, it just doesn't seem to work now. Then the bosses are saying to me, well, it's a jolly. We see conferences as a jolly now. Like, if we're going to give our assistants a budget, it's not going to be for a conference. We want more concentrated content. The younger EAs, the millennials and Gen Zs that I've spoke to, are not interested in conferences at all. They prefer smaller seminars where more people have got more of a voice. We joked last week that when you're at a conference, and I've been this person, you're one of about 4 people that are asking the questions all day. Like, everyone else is mute, but you've got the same PAs that are going, after each speaker. They're, from EPA's perspective, we've tried, but they're just, because we're committed to paying speakers, they're too expensive to run now, and I have to pass on that cost. We don't make any profit from our events, and I refuse not to pay professional speakers and trainers, which I know most of the industry in the UK does work on freebies, and that's why they keep wheeling these events out. But I think you then have to go back, well, what is it all for? What are we really getting out of it? What are the attendees getting out of it? So over to you. She's dropped the bomb.
Yeah, look, I actually agree. I think there's a lot that conferences need to answer for in terms of who they're asking to speak, because so often you get sort of big name keynotes, but then there are no workshops of substance, of quality. Like, what am I actually walking away from that I didn't already know? What am I taking away from this conference? And it costs a lot to put on a conference. I think the other issue for conferences is that we are all very used to doing things virtually now. And I don't actually want to go and spend an entire day that I often have to take off as annual leave if my workplace won't give it to me, to go to a conference all day, when I know that I can get all of those speakers doing individual sessions like this, like 1 hour, 90-minute sessions, or a 2-hour workshop online where I can do it from home. It's easy for me to do my notes on my laptop. A conference is a hard sell these days.
I agree.
Sure, we know. Yeah.
I think having been to conferences all over the world, and experienced it in different locations with different speakers, the content is not right. Yeah, we talk about being strategic and all of those things, and there were conferences that ran for about 2 years and everything was strategic, and that was fine. But the content's not right. Yes, we have the basics, and the basics get done and we talk through them, but it's talk through very blasé, very like, okay, cool, this is how you do
Surface level.
It's very surface level. It doesn't scratch the itch. Again, the speakers, although and this is just a personal thing, although they've done extraordinary things, those extraordinary things do not impact what I do as an EA. So I've been through loads of keynotes where I know the takeaways are your own and it's personal to yourself, but like, sometimes I just sit there and I go, I couldn't be bothered. Like, I don't care what you've done, right? This is not a self-gratification exercise. You are supposed to be inspiring or giving me some sort of takeaway for me to walk away with. And then the price, I mean, you're pricing it out of the market. I mean, a 2-day thing for £1,600, 5-day thing for £3,000. Like, no one has that money lying around. We're in a cost of living crisis. I mean, people can't afford to pay their mortgages at the moment. They're worried about where their next meal is going to come from. And you put a conference on for £3,000. I'm sorry, what are you trying to do? in my words, it's blatant stealing.
I think it comes back to what we were saying with micro learning. I mean, I'm interested in hearing from a lot of those speakers, but I can do it in a 1 hour session. So for EA How To, every single month I hold a 1 hour webinar. It's free for absolutely anyone to attend. And I do fireside chats with a lot of those speakers who do the conference circuit, and I absolutely love them. But all I need to do is go to that 1 hour session. I don't need to spend $3,000 and take a day or 2 days out of my life and spend on accommodation and that kind of thing to do it. So a conference is a hard thing to put on. And we've toyed with this with EA How To. Do we run a virtual conference in 2025? And we're still a little bit unclear because of all of the reasons you said. We want to make sure that it's really valuable, that people are taking away actionable things that they can do. But you've also got to do that and be able to afford to run it. And it's hard to pull off.
It is. Someone who's been running conferences for 20 years, believe you me, it is. And I'm just picking up on Sandria's comment about the keynote speakers from the former, I think they were under the Office show, not the PA show, but Nelson Mandela's PA and Professor Stephen Hawking. And do you know what? Those people are absolutely, I've seen those people as well, absolutely amazing. But we have had so in the EPAA Facebook group, where we just, as many of you know, we just say what we want in there. We just get honest feedback. I said to them a couple of months ago, I'm getting the distinct impression that you're really not bothered about hearing so much from former EAs too, in like a conference or official event format, because although it's a nice to hear story and it's inspiring, it's not going to help you get work necessarily. And so we've agreed now with the members in that group that we push that stuff to Firesides instead of on our event programs.
And maybe, Vic, maybe that's what's changed. Maybe it now has become a matter of survival. So a conference, yes, it's inspiring and all this good stuff, but actually now I have a need. You need to empower me with something practical that I can go and use tomorrow morning in my office. And maybe the audience has changed and the needs and the reality of the audience has changed. So, you know, I think that is a very important thing to note here as well, that it's not business as usual. People are starting to feel the pressure. We understand that there's certain risks and challenges that are coming online now at speed. So the nice to have, yes, it's great to listen to somebody who's inspiring, but if I'm investing time and money, I want something I can put into my toolbox immediately.
Yeah.
So I think
tangible ROI, right? You need to
and that's what I love.
You need to be able to walk away and go, I was listening to another, and I've listened to another. I've been privileged to be in a lot of things loads of times. It's being able to walk out and go, oh, actually, there's the answer to that question. Or actually, there's something I can go and work with. It's what's tangible. You give up your time, you
strategies and tools.
You give up your money, but like, what is the assistants always ask me, well, what I need to put an ROI down when I ask for this funding. Right? There needs to be something that I can tell my boss I'm going to come back with. And I go, well, what are you going to come back with? Oh, I'm going to tell him that I met this one and that one and I've networked. And like, you could do networking in your sleep. You could do it every day. You do it every day. You go on Facebook, you go on Instagram, you go on LinkedIn, you do all of those networking. You know all of these people. You need to have a tangible ROI. You need to come back and go, I've learned how to do X, Y, micro-learning, like you were saying, Alicia, micro-learning about Microsoft and Google and all of these other things, AI, all of those things.
And something that ticks a South African boss's box is if, you know, they tend to be a bit cheap. So I come back and I say, not only have I learned this, but I'm organizing a session with the other EAs who weren't there to transfer the skill. Okay. You know, expanding the ROI out to the next group of people. So I think the ripple effect of training as well, we shouldn't underestimate.
Yeah, and I would also want to say that I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from going out and attending in-person networking events. I know everything I do is online, but I personally make sure I go and get out and meet people, because the connections that you do make in real life do tend to be stronger. And especially if it's with people that you've connected with on LinkedIn, and then you've gone out of your way, you go, you know what, we seem to have a lot of in common, let's go and meet each other in person. And they are strong. So I do encourage everybody to go and attend those events, especially the ones that are free, especially the ones that have something that really speaks to you and resonates with you. But a conference is hard because a conference is expensive due to the logistics, the venue, the time, the speakers, all of that. You know,
challenge. Definitely. I mean, it's why we're changing things. We've accepted that, and we're coming out that market after we've delivered next month's. And obviously we've got the seminar. So just to give you an example, we've got the seminar we're doing next year, which I've divided into 2 parts based on all this feedback we've got. And we've got you both doing the morning, so you're the EA gurus, and then we're totally in the leadership space in the afternoon. We've got a panel of millennial and Gen Z bosses, and then we finish with Karen Millen, OB, who's a very successful businesswoman and global fashion designer, but British. And they're the sorts of people I want to be hearing from. But it's less speakers, concentrated content, and it's actually that sort of things that as someone who used to be in HR, that's much easier to sell into a HR department. So we're doing more of those. So that's a 10 till 4 seminar. So it's not all day. And then some of the other seminars I've got coming out are half days. We're not trying to go into people's evenings so much now, because it's people are just so time poor, and with the caring, rail strikes and parenting, that, you know, it's just too much going on in people's lives. Just in the essence of time, I want to very quickly get onto her other Truth Bomb awards. I whipped up a storm, and I mentioned this last year. And I wasn't meaning to be cruel to anyone. I just, as someone that's been in the industry in the UK for a long time, I know I don't look like it. And I am a millennial, but I have been around for a long time. I've judged a lot of awards. I've helped support the Hayes Times PA of the Year Awards, the Exec PA that used to be here, National Awards. I do think we have too many awards in the UK. I understand why this has happened. I understand why the same PAs keep going for award after award after award. It's part of a validation piece. You know, that desperately trying to get recognition. I'm not trying to be cruel, but I do think we have too many. I'm afraid. Sorry.
I've never applied for an award, attended an awards, given an award. I think that shows what I think of the awards. I think it's a nice social event if everyone wants to get together and have some fun, but I don't take them seriously, and I don't know anyone who does. I certainly don't.
Well, I have to say, I think from a South African perspective, I view it very differently. I mean, we've got 2 prominent awards in the country, and I think the processes behind both of those, you know, how they do that it's credible. It's credible people, you know. So for us, I do think it is a spotlight that's being shone on our profession, but we don't have 20. We have 2.
We have at least 20.
And at least. And there's a credibility component behind it. There's like, okay, there's a process. It's not a popularity contest. And I do think, I mean, there are awards of great caliber in the UK, but again, there's a lot. So there's noise. How do you know which one? How do you separate the wheat from the chaff? I think that's the point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I've been in the UK, 3 years now? I've been to 6 awards evenings.
You are getting around.
Sorry?
You are getting around.
I am getting around. But I mean, the thing is, it's like you say, in South Africa, it's when you look at the award and you look at what the back end of the award looks like. How are they deciphering it? What are they doing? Is it inclusive? Is it like, does it include the entire industry, or is it particularly for a particular network's members? Like, then don't call them national awards, call them whatever, network awards, right? But I agree there are too many, but I do also agree about having to validate them somehow, having to validate EA somehow. It does take, I mean, as an EA, you often don't get the validation, you don't get the kudos, you don't get the thank you.
Yeah.
It's a very thankless job, and a very thankless, if you've got the right exec, it's not. But too often these EAs work in a very thankless environment. They go 9 to 5, they go home, they come back the next morning, all of those other things. What I do have an issue with is just the spray and pray approach of self-nominating. Like, what's on God's green earth are you self-nominating yourself for an award? That is like, it should be a peer nomination or something else. Or we've pulled all the information together, and these are the top 5 EAs based on this criteria.
Yeah, I hear a lot about, you know, EAs, it being a thankless role and that kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, I've certainly been in those roles where you have just there's no appreciation. And then I've been in others where, you know, your boss is constantly telling you you're a star and you're amazing, and it does feel good. But I don't know that that's unique to EAs. I hear them complain about it a lot, but I don't know that anyone's really going and thanking Bob in finance every day and patting, you know, Susan in the back on the back in communications. Like,
yeah,
I don't know that that's unique.
Valid point.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, how many times does IT get a thank you when the whole system's collapsed? Like, seriously, they're not asking for it.
But the awards do give some validation. They do have a place.
It raises
when
the
you
profile.
oversubscribe it, it's like we're going back to this whole thing of 2 years of strategic PA, EA banter. It's the same thing. You get in, and like you said, Vic, it's the same EAs get awarded the same roles for like a year. And then next year they'll go to the next category down and they just start hunting these titles. And like, yes, I'm an award winner. And I'm proud of the fact that I'm an award winner because I was the first male to do it. So there's kudos in that. But like, I'm not going to go out my way to look.
It's not the first thing on your LinkedIn profile.
No, I mean, it does say award-winning assistant, I think. But like, to me, that award means a lot to me because of who I am and what industry I work in. So I'm going to say something to people. But like, I don't go out my way to go and look for awards, and then move it. I just.
Can I tell you, like, I'm a multi-award-winning PA, and I used to have that on my strapline, but I've removed them, the PA awards that I've won, and I've removed it from my CV. There are 2 other awards I won, which I actually gave me more, I'm sorry to say. So I was voted in the top 30 women in the City of London, which was a very prestigious list that you can't even be peer nominated for. Like, this wasn't a self-nomination, it was a complete shock. I was the first EA to ever be in that list. And then the other one was City AM newsletter, top 25 influential women in the City of London. And I ended up in there again as the first EA. To be the first EA in those lists, and we're going back a few years now, I think one of them was 2017, one of them was 2016, I can't remember, but that meant a lot to me, to be stood on a platform with all these tremendous women. Some of them are directors, one of them is the CEO of a bank, like that. And I didn't actually care about winning the award for me. I'm like, what can I do? Like, the fact that there's an EA standing on the platform with these other professions, so they meant a lot to me. One of the award organisers, contacted me earlier this year saying, Vic, we've got 0 nominations. And there've been the usual blips out over LinkedIn. And I'm literally having to come up with ideas about who to nominate, because they were just running out of, because you've got, as we say, we've seen the same PA. I actually have seen the same PA win 5 different awards in the last 18 months.
But it's also the number of awards being handed out at these award ceremonies. You've got at least 20 awards, and they've taken every single KPI that an EA could have will have an award, and that drives me mad, right? Like, no.
Yeah, and I think I'd also like to give a shout out to third sector and public sector PAs. Like, I know the awards in this country, they barely ever get a look in, like rarely ever, whether it's a public vote or whether they've got a judging panel with fellow PAs. They rarely ever make it into that top 3. And so I've been very vocal about that issue. If you're looking at awards, we should be looking at our entire industry, not just for those that work for celebrities and big corporations. It's quite disheartening. I know a number of NHS EAs who would have wholeheartedly, what they did during the pandemic in those hospitals and the risk they put themselves at as well. They were on the front line. I mean, they were serving food to patients on top of their EA roles. Like that, some of them were put forward for awards and they just didn't have and I'm sorry, but if someone that's been involved behind the scenes over the years, that would have been worthy criteria to me, that you really have like stepped up to the plate.
But I think that's the thing when you've got like at least 20 different awards and they're run by everyone and their dog. Like EA How To could start the EA How To Awards tomorrow and it would just be adding to the pile. It's the same sort of cliquey group of people that you see at every awards group. So I think it's just it doesn't mean anything. Whereas an award like Women of City of London, that's that's a really significant achievement. It's not the same as every single EA group is just going to put on their award show. Like,
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, I think now we've probably come to the end of our conversation. This has been exhilarating. I've really enjoyed, and I know probably some of you may think we've been a little bit brutal at times, but I just think if we're going to build a profession going forward, we had to start having some of these conversations and just being upfront and honest. And the frightening emails and texts and LinkedIn direct messages I've had this year about what EAs are really worried about, because, you know, as Sharon said, bills to pay, food to put on the table, that is ultimately, that's what it is. And there's nothing wrong with thinking about that when you're looking to progress your career. And for those of you that are thinking about leaving the profession as well, we've got a series coming out soon to start giving you options. And that's not me shooing you out the profession. That's just me acknowledging that you are not going to be an EA for 45 years. That it's just not going to happen anymore. And that as part of EPAA's rebrand that we're going through, that will be all on our website, that we just want to support you for the time that you are an EA or PA or AA, but then we will wish you well onto your next profession. Listen, and members just left EPAA. She's become a landscape gardener, so you really honestly don't know. Like as Anel said, everyone's journey is different. She wants to be outdoors now, so bless her.
Yeah, one of our members just left and became a jeweler.
Oh my God,
that's amazing.
Why not?
Yeah, the world is your oyster. Like you only get one shot at life. And I always quote the holiday movie, which is coming up soon, my favorite movie of the Christmas season. But when the Oscar-winning director is sitting there having dinner with Kate Winslet, and he says, "Why are you a supporting lady in your own life?" And he's just saying, basically, take charge of it. It's your career, your movie, your life. Take charge of it. You should never be the support act in that. So I always quote it to EP members at this time of year, and they're like, "Vic, not the holiday again." But I just want to thank our panelists today. Thank you very much for such a great conversation, and we will get this up on YouTube. Just come to the comments. Thank you, Susan, for being with us today.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Victoria.
We really appreciate it. Yeah, we've got some. I'll pull off the chat that we didn't get to, and I'll send it to you. But I think we've covered most of all of it, and we did Candice's other Truth Bombers, the chief of stuff, which I think we have covered.
Yep.
But please feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, or La La Land as they call it. We're there to continue the conversation and rattle cages. And what do you want from us? You know, please always keep giving us that feedback and telling us and talking to us. Helen, really great. Well, you can share it with some of your public sector colleagues if you wish. The YouTube link will be up in a few hours. But this has been exhilarating for me. I'm now going to go and run 5 miles. No, I'm joking. I've got a dog to walk.
Vic, thank you very much for creating this space. I think some of these conversations were overdue, and thank you to these awesome panelists. It really was a fun conversation. Time flies when you're speaking truth.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you later.